We're muted. Oh, it mutes all of us.
Irv, can you hear us?
I can hear you.
Excellent. Okay. Whew. I apologize for the technical difficulties. That is a lot of finagly business. Okay. So I will call the Regional School Committee to order at 6:07 because
Roll call.
yep,
Yeah, sorry.
because we have a remote participant. We'll do roll call attendance. Deb,
Here.
Sarah,
Present.
Tillman,
Present.
Jennifer,
Here.
Anna,
Here.
Bridget,
Present.
William,
Here.
Irv,
Here.
and Sarah Bess. We are all here. Okay, great. So our first item is a review of new courses. Were there any new courses to review?
No.
No.
Oh.
Moving right along. Look at that. Okay. Next up is a debrief of our 4 towns meeting from Saturday. Okay. Yes. So we met with all of our lovely towns on Saturday morning. We had what I felt like was a lot of good conversation around our budget and planning for FY26. Was there anything in particular anybody wanted to mention? Deb?
I had some questions about the breakout sessions, but do you want to talk about things overall first?
Not necessarily. No. Go
Okay.
ahead.
So I was just curious as to how the other towns conducted their breakout sessions and the topics that were covered and kind like the format. Ours was run by the town council chair, and we spent a chunk of time talking about the financial guidelines, which at that point were drafted, the ones they'll be sending the committee, and then there was kind of discussion around what I felt like what statutory meant. So I just wanted to know if there were more interactive or robust or different types of topics, how the other towns conducted theirs.
Anybody? So I think we had a lot of in Pelham, we had conversation about statutory also and how to, kind of get to where the regional budget needs the towns to be. So it was more along those lines than talking about financial guidelines. Sarah?
Well, I wanted to thank the superintendent and her team. It was a really great presentation. I think there was a lot of talk about the assessment method, let's just call it that, and dissatisfaction for how much it's, at least for some towns, how much it's diverging from what had been agreed upon. And I would think it might be straightforward to maybe over a 4 or 5 year period to get all the towns back to whatever the modified statutory method is. But that's only part of what has to happen. I mean, I think we only succeed if both the budget and the assessment method are acceptable. So, we can all get to back to the assessment method that the towns want, but if the budget is still what they consider out of line, we haven't closed the deal, so.
Go ahead. Yep.
I just put my hands to it.
Yes, I can see. I appreciate it.
Like you're stopping me.
No, sorry.
Nope, that was Mr. Cuckoo over here. I'm sorry.
I can make it on the list. Thank you. I really have to thank the team. One, I have to thank the principals in the region because after the first 4 towns meeting, the leadership teams have really come together to pull a lot of conversations. I have to thank Shannon and Kate for really just guiding through the numbers and the constant, like, I think in the past 2 months, my focus has either been on personnel or budgetary matters as being superintendent, and it's been really critical to move us forward. The one thing that I think we need to be aware of, and I stated it on Saturday, and Shannon repeated it, and I don't think it caught, was that we are the only region that consistently every year submit a 1-year document for for DESI's approval saying, this year only, this is what we're going to do. If we cannot agree, we will revert back to the 2008 amendment, which is the statutory method, right? So, the modified statutory method. So what we actually need to do is come up with how we're going to get back to where we need to be to fully fund the region, or fund the region. Because we have gone so far from what we agreed to, our deficit will continue to cause us to cut programs. And that's one of the reasons that we have the projections that we're not holding to, but it's clearly there. So Shannon, Kate, and I, we did agree that before February, we would submit like a progression for how we can get there to get back to where we need to be. But we have to be very honest with the fact that even what we are proposing still leaves us at a deficit, and we're trying to run educational systems, like an educational system for children to promote them being ready to transition into the next phase of their life at the region. So that's what I just need us to hold dear to us.
Tillman?
Yeah, so the conversation, the breakout for Leverett was more about the total budget than about the assessment method. And I felt overall this was a difficult conversation in the whole 4 towns meeting. It was difficult to separate those two pieces together because each town is thinking about how much they can afford, and rather than doing it step by step where we agree on a budget and then figure out how we split it up. So that was challenging. Leverett is clearly the town that's most out of whack with the whatever modified statutory method, and I think the representatives that were there understood that. But as one of our selectmen said, that progression path that you're developing needs to be reasonable over enough time that we don't have, 17% in 1 year. That I think overall the sentiment is that the town is not taking a strong stance on, what exactly they put in front of the voters, but they want to make sure that they put something in front of the voters that they feel comfortable approving. And it was the question of the sell, right? And can you sell whatever percentage it is? Right. And we can explain the divergence from the statutory method, but it needs to be with enough time that it's not a shock.
Right. And I want to say it's not just Leverett, both Leverett and Pelham are greatly off from where the method said that they should be. And I think the conversation is the impact to both of those smaller towns and their budget. So I do agree that there needs to be a scaffolding up to it, and one that would be approvable by the towns, so they don't feel the heavy impact of the weight.
Anna, did you have your hand up before?
I was just gonna say, in answer to Deb's question, that Shutesbury started off with AJ, who's the finance committee chair, just sort of like saying, this is what I see. Shutesbury's pretty committed to the idea that the budget that we approved last year is the base, and that's just the budget that we should start with working from. And then Shutesbury really doesn't want to see a bigger deficit than the 1.2 million, which is just like worst case scenario for them. And then just trying to figure out like how we can help make that happen, I guess. So it wasn't a very contentious discussion. It was just kind of summarizing stuff. Yeah.
I guess my point of view is with half an hour or 20 minutes, I didn't feel like Amherst really used the time to engage in meaningful conversation the way I had hoped or expected.
Anything further?
I just wondered when we go to those smaller groups, it's a school committee meeting. So then I'm wondering, like, it's great to hear from the different people in the towns, but it feels like a discussion in a way that maybe should be guided by school committee.
It's a joint meeting, right? It's a joint meeting.
Sometimes they bring a quorum, but many times they don't. Where we're required to be there and we have a quorum. And we call the meeting.
Dr. Z?
So I'm wondering if, because I know this year, Sarah Beth has been gracious with the regional committee in calling the meetings and stuff. And Bridget, what would that look like? Should it be like there's a guiding document? Like, should it be like there's an intended outcome when they come back? Because I think, to piggyback, I don't know who just said it because I was writing down a note, but school committee calls to order. The different towns, whoever had a quorum was able to call to order. And then I think they called to order because a quorum was present. If not, they just continue the discussion. So is the intent for them to be able to vote in that moment? Like, or, which some may or may not, but what would that look like when there's a breakout? Because I think the intent is when they come back together, do you want us to have a unified goal of conversation or convergence? Or?
I think just to go to our experience in Amherst, like I know you set a goal at the start of the meeting and you spoke to us about a goal and we didn't even get to discussing
Scratch the
that
surface,
goal.
right.
So if we had a school committee member who was, sort of chairing that and had maybe a guiding question or two, then we could be at least discussing the things that we need for our, as you said, we need some answers to this question, or at least we need clearly to know, like, okay, we aren't coming to any answers on these questions, but so that we could report out on the things that you need to know to run the district.
So a framing question, like even though there's side conversations, we still know that when we come back in the whole group and each group shares out, then they're sharing out on these specific bullet points that would help us to guide where we need to be.
I think so.
I think I wouldn't mind if, like, that's one of the things why I put in that setting the stage. I know in our meeting, the conversation was, well, I don't think Amherst is gonna be able to make a decision or this place. So I was like, what if I just set the stage of what the intent of the meeting is to kind of drive that conversation? And I'm wondering now if before we release it, if we just bring back the setting of the stage for the independent ones, that would, in like the breakouts and then, or the caucusing and then kind of, so I can see us kind of, because we guide the conversation in our presentation, kind of putting that in place so that when we come back, we say, when you come back, even though you have your discussions, be prepared to talk to this key point.
Deb, did you have a?
Yeah, so I'm gonna step it up a bit. I was super frustrated. In fact, I was sitting next to the chair and I just started mumbling things like, is this really how we're gonna spend our time? So I don't know if you folks need a chair or chair, but we at Amherst, I would appreciate somebody ahead of time identified as the chair, so I could, I guess, call a point of what are my options in those. It felt like running down the clock. It really just did. What are my options at that point?
I think that might be a thing that
Yeah,
Amherst has to
figure out on their own.
I don't know that we can tell them
Okay.
how to have their caucus.
Okay.
Tillman?
Yeah, I think the meeting was fine. There was nothing we expected from anyone.
Okay.
I mean, the superintendent presented the new situation,
Yeah.
showed that
Okay.
we have made progress on cutting the budget. We explained the needs.
Okay.
They hadn't gone away. And no town is in a position to make any decision, right? So it's, I think having had the conversation was the important part, and that happened.
Okay.
I understand your frustration in wanting to know numbers, but
No, it just, Can I?
Yep.
So there's so many different trajectories here. So if things had been normal, Amherst would have already submitted financial guidelines to the region for how we are supposed to frame our budget going forward. And the other towns probably aren't that far along because you have spring. So Amherst is saying, you know, this is what we need, and we'll know better information at the end of January. But in fact, that was the only time they were going to be able to refine their guidance for how much we should expect to increase our percentage by from the previous year. So by the end of January, they will have the revenue, they'll have a better well, they always seem to have a good understanding of the property taxes as well as local receipts and a better understanding of state aid. But that's all they're ever going to really be able to give us. So there's what I feel like is a structural problem in that as they're able to refine more information at the end of the third quarter, that is beyond the point at which we can really make informed decisions about, or at least on a wider scale, about the regional budget. It then needs to go to the towns with 7 days ahead, I think, of the spring. I couldn't,
It's like 21 or 40 or something like that. It's a long time.
okay. I thought the warrants needed to go in 7 days ahead.
It's more
Okay.
than that.
So there's this big kind of gap in how, it just seems like last year, all our towns said you came to us way too late to refine what your budgetary needs are, and we've learned from that process not to wait that late. I've been really trying to figure out, and now I'm hearing from my town that it's really too early to get good numbers, and the numbers will be getting better, and they'll get better past the point at which you all, as a region, need to make a decision. And I really don't know where that leaves us in terms of the 4 towns, and I don't even mean assessment methods, I just mean in terms of timing. I feel like my analogy is my town, the avocado. It's too early, it's too early, it's too early, too late. And, you know, I want to hit the avocado when it's ready. That's how I feel. And I don't know if there is, okay, going back to a different representation. Is there an overlap? Is there a time at which all of the towns can engage in well-informed discussions so that we can give recommendations to our superintendent about how much money she has to work with without throwing the whole system into awry? Because I'm very sensitive to the fact that she said, in January, that's when I start thinking about next year. In April is when I have to tell people if they have or don't have jobs, and I really don't feel, I don't have any better clarity than I did last year in when the avocado is ripe. So there we go.
Sarah?
I have to abandon the avocado analogy because I can't. I think this is how it's always been.
I know that.
I know, and because the town is waiting on the governor, you know, and all the towns are waiting on the governor, and then waiting on the legislature, and then they never even vote, you know, on time. So it's super dissatisfactory. And I think it's only when the financial situation is so squeezed that we're then painfully aware of how little we know for sure and how we're not going to know in time. So, and I think a lot of it is beyond anyone's control, which doesn't make the superintendent's job or ours any easier.
Tillman?
It's part of a negotiation process. right? Everybody has to play their role. We're gonna ask for more money, the town will tell us, I'm gonna speak for my town, but yours is not different. They're gonna tell us 2.5%, of course, because we tell everybody 2.5%, and then we go around and say, education is important, please, 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 you know, inflation and all these things, and eventually they agree to something higher, right? And so we say, well, we got something out of the town, and the town can say, well, we did the best we could with the limited tax dollars we have. It's a process. What went wrong last year was that our part of asking, please, 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 we need more, came very late, and therefore there was no back and forth there. And I think this year, even though we didn't achieve what ideally we would like, what you described, we achieved to have that conversation early, show that we're working on the budget, explain to the towns that it's probably gonna be something complicated. For example, Leverett will have a, you know, a large number because of the method and all these things, and there won't be any surprises. I still don't know what the outcome will be, right? We cannot give an exact number to our superintendent, but we've started the process earlier, and so to me, that was a success.
William?
Just real quick, I was thinking, could we get a timeline for our budgets, but task that to either our budget and audit subcommittee or our physical sustainability subcommittee, so we wouldn't have to take school committee time to do that, to come up with like the 4 towns' timelines of where maybe that avocado is ripe? I don't know.
Deb, you had,
Here
is your hand up, Irv?
Yes.
has been,
Oh,
Can't see it.
Yeah,
I
it's in
don't
the
see
left,
it.
the lower left corner,
Yeah.
there's the hand raised.
okay, sorry, Irv, I didn't hear it. Go ahead.
so it's my belief that we, when I say we, the school committee and the superintendent, should drive expectations around the budget relationship with the 4 towns. And by driving expectations, I believe that we should rally around the 1.2 deficit. And that is what we put forward as our budget. If we do not put out that expectation, then other expectations come before and they supplant us. I guess what I'm saying is, let us drive the expectations rather than having the expectations drive us.
Thanks, Irv. Oh, okay. Deb?
That sounds great. I like that idea a lot. I think the subcommittees are a good place to kind of have those conversations. I noticed one of those subcommittees didn't meet a whole lot in the fall. So maybe maybe you need to think about how that's gonna work in anticipation of the February 8th meeting. I think it would be helpful to me, if at all possible, if the presentation could go out a little sooner and we could entertain clarifying questions outside, before the caucuses, so that the caucus discussion is not about vocabulary. And then I think, piggybacking on what Irv said, driving the conversation might, I guess I'd want to think, the subcommittees think about moving our budget hearing, public budget hearing up earlier in the year, because by the time people weighed in last year, it was way too late for us to say, we're hearing from X people about this. So that would be part of the process that I would like to see fit in with that, minimizing the deficit.
Okay. Anything else? Okie dokie. Sarah?
All right, now I'm going to call the Amherst School Committee to order by roll call. Irv Rhodes. Bridget Hines.
Yes.
Jennifer Schau.
Here.
Deb Leonard.
Here.
And I'm here, Sarah Marshall. Okay. So Pelham will come back.
curriculum committee back from recess. Yes.
Looking at me?
Yeah. Do,
Why am I running this meeting?
well, I was gonna say, we jumped onto your meeting. Do you wanna run?
Yeah,
the-
okay. Sure, thank you. The first order listed is public comment. I'm sorry, Dr. Z, is there anyone here who would like to make public comment? Written comments have been attached to the agenda. All right, I see none. So the next item is the academic calendar, but do you want to do your entry plan findings first? We can discuss the calendar.
No, I just figured for the next about 6 items, I'm the person speaking,
You're gonna
and I
sit-
want to just sit this way
Okay.
and face this way to talk about the things that are being projected. So
All right.
I just shifted my positioning one time.
Okay.
So I believe it was in October, in a regional meeting towards the end of October, that it was posed that the request was for the school calendar to come before the committees. I did some research around how the calendar was previously done. Was it earlier than that? Oh, okay. I did some research around how the calendar was previously done in the district, noting that for me, it was always a collaborative effort, but not just a collaborative effort. It wasn't usually done this early before. And so I pulled together a small team of educators in the district. I invited some individuals, some showed up, some did not. And we began working to include representative from APEA to begin working on the calendar. We presented about this, I would say it would be the final one that we finished on Sunday would be like our 12th iteration. And so a couple of things that we looked at in our discussions for everyone was, one, the fact that the additional 5 days at the end of the school year, it was often hard for individuals to come back after Juneteenth. So we took into account, with us having those 5 days and Juneteenth being the end, let's work backwards in the options. And this was for the other options that did not start after Labor Day. Also, in 2025, Labor Day actually is a lot earlier. September 1st is the first Monday of September. So I know a lot of the feedback that was received, it seemed very early, but Labor Day itself was very early. The last 3 iterations that are attached, and it is color-coded. I know some individuals are like, oh my gosh, there's a lot of color. It matches my personality a little bit, some flair. But we also wanted it to be very clear what the different delineations were. We shared some feedback with the district the past 2 days, just clarifying some things. One of the things was, I know in Massachusetts, they're kind of, the terminology for parent is not just parent anymore. They're shifting to kind of caregiver. So we wanted to create that. I looked at the fact that best practice is actually to give frequent progress updates and monitoring and opportunities. And so kind of splitting that out. A lot of the feedback, and I did present it to the staff, I wanted to make sure that the staff heard it before it went out publicly, was that one, option 2, a lot of individuals voted for option 2 because of the start and the end date. So we're going to use that as our framework and basis to continue moving forward. I believe that's the one where school starts August 25th, which is the Monday, the 1 week before Labor Day. Also, the elementary educators really appreciated their 3 parental conference days at the start of the school year. That's doable, and we will be creating like an elementary committee, because I think they also need to hear, and I'll talk about some of that in the entry findings, some of the parental feedback around the gaps in communication throughout the year around student progress. And so I think that there needs to be a middle ground between what was past practice before and what parents are looking for in terms of communication to help their students move forward. So I think through a collective elementary voice, we can kind of address that and find something within the new framework. January 20th was another discussion point. And I know the committees received emails. I received emails. I received phone calls and had conversations with educators. And so January 20th, it really was built in a flexible way where there can be workshops, there can be a planning and preparation day, and it actually I think ends right at day 90 on our count. And then I think that is most of the feedback. So the next steps for us would be tomorrow there's going to be signups for the elementary committee as well as like an educator feedback committee around the whole calendar. I'm hoping that as we start to delve deeper, we'll be able to get some community feedback on the next draft in January, and then my hope is that by the end of January, early February, we can present the final draft to the committee. I know some committee members have shared some of their questions and concerns. I know we've been also taking those into consideration, and I open up for any additional feedback on the calendar.
Jennifer.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Z. I also landed on number 2 as the option that made the most sense. So I'm glad to hear I'm sort of in sync with the other feedback. I have some questions and some notes. First, I think there may be like a typo or an error where it says, I'm looking at the list on the right, August 25th, first day of school, half day, kindergarten orientation. It says 8:20 to 21 as opposed to 8:25, 26. I mean, all the other calendars had the kindergarten orientation taking place on that first day as opposed to a week before. Is that not in?
That may be because so this calendar was shifted quite quickly, so it might be a typo.
Okay, just pointing that out.
That's fine.
Okay. I like this better for various reasons. The calendar 3 had like a half day on Monday, December 22nd, and this has a full day on the 22nd and then a half day on Tuesday, the 23rd. It feels like that makes more sense. I like having January 2nd as part of the break so that extra weekend, January 2nd is a Friday, so that sort of that extra weekend can tag on to families' plans. So overall, I liked option 2, and the start date being August 25th seemed more reasonable than the previous week, which just feels really early, and then the end date also seemed reasonable. So overall, number 2 seemed to make the most sense to me. I have an overall question that I'm hoping you can answer, which is about Three Kings Day, which is always January 6th. I know that the districts have historically had that day as a holiday, but I was hoping someone could educate me as to why. In the past, that day has been called, there was one year that the calendar said that school was closed that day for budgetary reasons. And at the time, I wasn't on the school committee at the time. I contacted a member of the school committee and asked why. And I think she told me that there was many staff would take that day as a personal day to observe the holiday, and it was just very expensive with substitutes. But then someone else told me that there was actually a lot of families who kept their student home that day to celebrate the holiday, and that there was like a student absenteeism. Anyway, I'm not that familiar with that holiday. I'm hoping someone can educate me as to why we've historically had that as a holiday.
So I can't educate you as to why you've historically had it
Right.
as a holiday,
Yep.
but I know coming from the Virgin Islands, we've historically had it as a holiday. And I think there are other states who may have as well. It's a religious holiday. A lot of, not just religious, but also culturally, there are some cultures that celebrate Three Kings. I know for some Hispanic cultures, that's like a second Christmas day, in that regard. And so there's a lot of reverence and observance when it comes to that. What I've learned in being in this community is that there are a series of religious holidays that will turn around to be either high student absenteeism or high staff absenteeism. And either way, it's going, like, there's not enough individuals to run the district or enough students for there to be classes, like the balance. And so what I've learned is Three Kings is one of those holidays here, as well as Good Friday. I did have a series of, in our original meetings, I have to thank Victoria. She actually pulled about 10 of the previous calendars together and emailed it to the task force. And we looked at the days, and that's where we knew that Yom Kippur actually is another holiday that's in on this calendar, but it wasn't on last year's. Well, it wasn't on the calendar for this school year that we're in because it fell on a Saturday or on a weekend. So, but previous years, it was actually a day that was observed. And so we put it back in for next year. And so things like that and trying to learn the cultural nuances of the district, that's what I've learned here. I actually came from a district, and I think some of the other individuals, and looking at districts in other states where the 2-week break was a full 2-week break. So what happened this year, that's a new thing I learned, but to me that was kind of standard. So
You mean
Thank
the
you.
Christmas? Sorry.
Yes.
The Christmas break. Okay. Any other comments or questions? Anna?
I kind of already said this directly to Dr. Z, but both 2 and I think there's a lot of similarities between calendar 2 and calendar 3.
Well, it's actually 1 and 2, but I know what you're talking about. Go ahead.
But the current calendar 2 option has like a half day on the 23rd.
Of
And
which
then
month?
December for the
Right.
Christmas break. And I don't know, I get the sense that there's a lot of travel that occurs around that holiday. I know for my family personally, we travel. And just because of the way the holiday functions, there's a lot of baking and cooking that are associated with the holiday.
Right.
If you celebrate. And for some people, I think it starts a lot earlier than other people. But my family flies to Minnesota, so you have a flight date. And then you have a baking day, and then you have another baking day, and then you have like celebration. And it's just like we front load quite a lot. And, if we have to leave on the 26th, we can leave on the 26th. But we have to like be there on like the 22nd, or at least the evening of the 22nd, for us to have any hope of being able to do all of the things that we need to do, because we start our celebration on the 24th. And I'm not saying that should dictate anybody's schedule. I'm just saying I wonder if there are a lot of other families who have sort of a similar mindset when it comes to celebrating the holidays, making it difficult to go to school on the 23rd. And, some years it makes it very easy because, Christmas is on Monday or Tuesday, and then therefore it's like very easy to make it all work out. And then when Christmas falls a little bit later in the week, then it just becomes, more and more school missed if you leave early. So I don't know what the solution is. I think that we're trying to balance a whole lot of different things, like don't start too late, or don't start too early, don't end too late, don't have too much vacation here, or have enough vacation here, and like, do we have enough time for the teachers to do the things that they need to do? And we just don't have enough time in the school year to squeeze it all in between like the week before Labor Day and like June 19th. So it's like, I don't know how to do it, but just, if squeezing out like a little extra time in that week, I just don't know how to do it by squeezing it on both ends, though. So, not helpful, sorry.
No, it is. So, a couple of things that we have to take into consideration. And I think that upon coming into the district and learning what I can through research is looking at what DESE and the law outlines. We have 990 hours and we have 180 instructional days. Right? So even if we meet the 990 hours, we still have to meet the 180 instructional days. Half days and early dismissals count as instructional days. So it's just that then it's like, what about the hours? So it really becomes a balancing act. And when you have to look at what do you put in, what do you observe, what is it going to, how are we going to make it through? That's where the conversation comes in, that we end up with a half day on December 23rd. Because right now, where we're at exactly 185 days with the 5 makeup days. When we take out the 5 makeup days, we're at 180 days. We have to take into consideration that the teacher contract is 184 days. And so there, there's a lot of things and counting that we did to keep into compliance. And so it really is a balancing act. It may mean that we may have to agree and compromise to take out maybe one of the other half days, full days, but right now we're exactly where we could be in terms of abiding by the law.
I have a comment and a question, and then maybe there'll be more from committee members. I think Juneteenth has only been a holiday for a few years. And this is the first I've heard that, like, there might have been high absenteeism for school days after that. So I guess I would push back a little bit on the idea that we really just can't have any more school after the 19th. Maybe there's a lot of data I just don't know about. And then let me ask my question then, and you can respond. I'd like to know more about the caregiver conference days spread throughout the calendar as you and your team and the working group envisioned them, and how they differ, if they do, from the elementary caregiver conference. And there was an email at some point today regarding the elementary school educator is concerned about needing 3 days to get through all the caregiver student conferences and wanting to have those early. So what do you think will happen, or what was the purpose?
I'll start with the Juneteenth. So the idea isn't just about Juneteenth, it's about Juneteenth marks the middle of June. Like it's a little after the middle of June. It's June 19th. I think this year on the calendar, it's about the second or third week in June, right? The avoidance that we're trying to avoid is pushing it into later June, like making individuals come back if we have those 5 days and pushing them further into late June instead of kind of starting earlier. Taking into consideration some of the feedback I heard was summer programs, was the time off, was a transition for students, with the start date coming back up in August. So when you start to count into the weeks, and the consideration of, I think it's standard practice around somewhere close to 10 weeks or 9 to 10 weeks off, and trying to create that bridge and that gap, passing that point, that Juneteenth point, actually starts to delve into the summer programs, to the opportunity to prepare schools for the upcoming school year, the idea that at that point, everyone has started to already make summer plans. And so using that as our cutoff point of the fact that after that, we're trying to make sure that no one has to return, that was the idea of it. So not so much that the Juneteenth holiday, but trying not to go too deeply into June. That's going to affect and impact other things. Mm-hmm. That was the issue with option 3, which ended around June 30th with the 5 days. So that actually, using that as a marker actually creates that opportunity for individuals to have a semblance of rest and repair for the upcoming school year. I did send out, and I think I talked about this first, sending out the email talking about the first email was around the questions around the caregiver conference days versus parental conference days. It's kind of the same thing, just using the term caregiver versus the term parent. The second thing was the elementary caregiver days. They expressed needing 3 at the start of the school year. And when you look at the calendar right now, presently how it is, there are 3 days at the onset of the school year in October. And then there are no other days marked on the calendar that outlines that specific for elementary, like for them to conference. They do practice or engage parents throughout the year. But one of the things that may have assisted, especially with our marginalized, low-performing students, is having those outlined days on the calendar where individuals can kind of plan and prep from and know that this day is for me to engage with. That is why I said I'm going to create an elementary committee. One, I heard all of the things that they've done with the three days, but also trying to understand how do you plan to engage parents and how can we get that messaging to them that say, even though this may be here in October, I still want to track and move progress through for the rest of the year. And so that's the idea of having the elementary educators come together, hearing the voice, delving into the conversation, getting their feedback more so on the calendar so that we have a common, like, I can't do this alone. I need the educators for an educational system. So hearing their voice and having them talk about, well, these are the concerns that parents have where they're not clear on the report card. They're not clear on how do I track progress. I want to meet with you more often. Then they can say, this is how we can engage further, and this is what it can look like.
Jennifer?
I want to say thank you, Dr. Z, for your idea of, or your plan to have an elementary committee, because the school committee has received input from elementary educators with some of their concerns and input about the calendar. So I thank you for responding in the way you did. Did the calendar committee have elementary representation?
I would say not at the table, but the conversation was held. So that's where we had a gap. But more so, I would say that this year, having a committee was what I heard was different in itself. I think that individuals may think that this was standard practice prior. I was informed it was not, that wasn't a practice to even have other individuals to the table to have this discussion. It was basically kind of done in a small group and then shared out. I don't know if that's because the calendar really rolled over year, but I am trying more of a collaborative method and engaging the different stakeholders to hear their voice around things. And so that's where it came to.
Deb?
Should just move over one of those mics. Thank you for the calendar. One of the things that we heard last year was that widowed dates were difficult for families who planned summer camps. Sorry, widowed. So ending on a Friday is going over into the following week on the 22nd is not optimal for those families.
Of December?
Of June, I'm sorry. I mean, it's impossible to do January and December without having whittled. So I was just talking about the summer and I guess advocating for not going past June 19th.
Trying not to.
Part of it's snow days.
For not going to, yeah.
The snow days.
Right. And then the other thing that has come up, and I'm not sure was discussed that I'm aware of, that well ahead of time is the option of having snow days be homeschool days.
So I actually have an elect meeting. That's all the district leaders on Thursday. And one of the questions I wanted to pose to them is how equipped are we to actually, instead of making it a non-instructional day and it's a snow day, switch over to the opportunity for it to be remote or asynchronous. There are kind of caveats in the guidance around instructional hours and what counts as an instructional day. So I kind of wanted to review that and see if there's an opportunity when we can't physically make it in to kind of switch into something like that. That might not be something that can happen this year because I'm learning that when there's things that are shifts in working or what may or may not be considered a working condition, I don't know. And so I haven't gotten a formal definition. It becomes a bargaining issue. But I think it's a discussion for us to have around how we lose instructional time and if there's opportunities for us to actually make it work. I think that's going to need a team to delve into. That's going to need teams of educators and individuals to have that discussion around what that would look like so that we don't lose the instructional day and we may not have to go into the 5 days. But again, that's going to take further vetting because that's something different. And I'm learning how different works here.
Thank you.
Tillman.
I like option 2 very much. I think for all the points that were mentioned, in particular the alignment with full weeks, which make camp at the beginning, the previous summer and the following summer easier. If we ever go to option 1, I agree with Anna that the 22nd half day is problematic, and I would rather sacrifice the 5th for that of January, because before the holidays is probably more pressure on timing than after. And finally, I want to note that we are a public school, and we should not, in my opinion, make any accommodations for any religious holidays other than those that are legal holidays in the Massachusetts calendar. It's a slippery slope to decide which religions we favor, and while there are requirements that we accommodate people who choose to celebrate those days, I think it should not impact the calendar.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? I will just add that I think, along what Tillman said, that I think when we've had Good Friday off, it was not framed, it was also another due to budgetary issues. I think it wasn't expressly a religious holiday. I could be misremembering. William?
Yeah, just a quick question, and it's a clarifying question. For the seniors, is it ever on the calendar when they get out? Or no? No?
No. I mean, I'm treading lightly because there are certain things that I'm accustomed of seeing on calendars that are not on the calendar. And so I'm treading very lightly, as you can see, with the calendar and what's happening. But I do know that I need to delve a little bit deeper into the exam dates, the dates seniors are released. I'm accustomed of seeing graduation dates on the calendar. And so there's some more conversation that needs to come up before the calendar is finalized. And I'll make note about the, seniors' last day, because their exams should be a little bit different from everyone else's, so that you know if they're graduating or not. So those conversations will definitely be had.
Thank you.
All right. I think we're done with the calendar then. Thank you for that. Oh, I did want to say, so you're going to bring a calendar back in January, I think you said.
I think we're losing some time in January. And so the goal is that by February, a calendar will be submitted, yes.
Okay. Will APEA have to vote again?
Yes.
On okay. Did you have something? Yeah.
Yeah, just two things. Last year, or this year, I guess, this calendar year, we voted on the calendar in like February 27th. So it seems like we're on track to match that this year. And I just wanted to say, I'm actually going to step out for a few minutes to go see my daughter perform in the chorus concert, and then I'll come back.
Have fun. Good luck.
All right, then, let's move on to the superintendent's entry plan findings.
Sure thing. So I made a short snippet, and I did print it, and no, I did not use district funds to print it. So I just put that out there. I did print it, yes. And so, two things I want to say before I start. I want to preface this by saying, and it's my new thing, one, I am often very direct, and I find myself to be very humorous, but I can often, because of my directness, and I'm learning, that may come off a little bit offensive. So in advance, I apologize. And so if there are concerns, my email is hermanx@arbs.org, and I am more than willing to have a conversation around anything that's presented today. Second thing is that this presentation is actually excerpts from the document. The document that was posted as well as will be posted on our district website is a hefty one. It's hefty because it has my findings, and this is findings. I came in, I entered, and it is 6 months. I am still new, I think. And so this is, again, I express findings. This is what I found when I came in. This is what I have explored. This is what I've audited. These are my thoughts, my reflections. And so the PowerPoint is actually going to walk through the document with you. I gave you a snippet piece that is printed out in case, and I know you have it online as well. And so I want to start out with this lovely stakeholder input report that was posted when the job for superintendent was posted. And I don't have this, but this is on board docs. And I used this document and I wanted to go through it with you. And so I'm going to go through the 4 questions that were asked to various stakeholders. And it's first, tell us the good things about your community. And I pulled out some of the quotes that kind of stuck out to me when I was thinking about if this is a place that I want to apply to. And diversity in the community, racial, economic, linguistic, cultural, education level, commitment to equity, interest in environmental responsibility, arts and culture. Amherst is generally progressive, but still has work to do to serve BIPOC, queer, and neurodivergent students. There is a diverse culture with a passion for education at all levels. Many people living here have some link to local higher education institutions. There are many languages spoken in our town. There are initiatives to bring about racial equity, and the need to move these principles forward is present in the schools as well. We have beautiful natural resources around too. Amherst has engaged populace that cares about high quality public education and is thinking about equity, racial and otherwise, and trying to put structures in place to achieve it. Question 2, tell us about the good things about your schools. We have a diverse community committed to supporting students, diversifying our staff, and academic excellence. Our schools are staffed by phenomenal teachers who are deeply committed to the intellectual, emotional, and personal development of youth in our community. They are not well supported enough, but they are a stellar group. The elementary schools especially treat our children with kid gloves. They are kind-hearted, mostly, and seek to inspire the individual child. Sadly enough, this is where the classism and racism takes place, and some teachers, not properly trained, allow our children to internalize that they are better than those being children of color and low income. The preschool at Cracker Farm has a great director and a talented staff. One of our elementary schools has a dual language Spanish program. It's attracted people to our school system. There are many talented staff in elementary schools. The high school does a good job of meeting the needs of students. The staff is talented as well. Question 3, what issues should the superintendent be aware of as he or she comes into the district? There is a lot of mistrust in higher levels of school administration after recent events. The middle school in particular has been highly impacted by these events, and many teachers and families are exhausted and looking for positive change, but also stability. Amherst has a very active vocal community. A new superintendent should assume that every action will be scrutinized and that someone will be apt to voice concerns regardless of what decisions are made. In other words, the ability to receive regular criticism while maintaining focus will be essential. Only the H is silent in Amherst. We are a vocal community, and speaking up should be considered part of the democratic process, not criticism to be silenced. There will be strong opposition to anything that they try to do that has not been done before in Amherst. I would recommend seeking a candidate towards the end of their career who doesn't have to worry about their reputation and future employment. It's a good last job in a career, not a place to build a resume for future employment, nor a place that candidates should assume will be a long-term job. Question 4. What skills, qualities, or characteristics should a new superintendent possess to be successful? A strong backbone, improved visibility in our community, visit our schools regularly. Excellent communication, thick skin, the ability to clearly articulate decisions, particularly why decisions were made. They should be able to make everyone feel heard and valued while also making decisions that work for the district as a whole. They will never be able to please everyone, and some people will be vocal about things they disagree with. They need to be able to balance making decisions with maintaining relationships with the community. The superintendent needs to be confident she has the knowledge and experience to make and stand by decisions, because everything will be questioned by the community. We need leadership, not consensus among 50 different experts in the district and community. We need focus on education, a renewed commitment to academic subject matter. We need someone who is aware of educational gaps between various student groups and who is committed to closing those gaps. But someone who is also realistic that perfection is hard to come by and budgets require making difficult decisions. And regardless of, this is snippets, I just want to make it quite clear, regardless of how or what was actually stated in these quotes, I still chose to apply and come here. And so for me, I want to say that this is my report of entry findings. These are findings. And what at the end you're going to realize is that I'm not going to come with solutions. I'm going to come with strategies and suggestions, because the work needs to be led but not done solely by me. And so it's a daunting document. It's a large document, but it's one that we're going to walk through together. I'm going to refer to pages. I'm going to be able to talk about what's happening. And more so, I'll save some time to answer any questions that we may have available. So I'm going to go through it. There are going to be chapters. There are chapters that are available. There's the executive summary, and I'm going to use the executive summary to walk you through data highlights, division of audits, strengths and challenges, and findings. And there is an appendix. It starts on page 69, but that appendix is not printed. I have a printed copy, but you have it online, okay? So I am Superintendent Dr. Z, best known, that is what I am best known as in ARPS. And I am one superintendent that serves 3 districts. I serve the district of Amherst, I serve the district of Pelham, and I serve the region. We have a diverse population, and I feel like our data speaks loudly, and the attendance data presented is our most recent attendance data reported out in October. As you can see, we have students who come to us, whether they have high needs, they are low income, they are high achieving, they are Asian, African American, Native, Hawaiian, multi-race. We do have a diverse community across all 3 districts. In Amherst, Pelham, and the regional staff, I have 7 principals. I have district administrators and assistant principals. I have 10. Professional staff, 332. This includes our teachers, our nurses, para-educators, 165. Clerical, there's 35. Our cafe workers are 21. It is a cafe. Our custodian and maintenance and transportation is 44. And I have 29 committee action members. So chapter 1 delves into the executive summary. And I do want to pull out some key points from that executive summary, and we'll talk about that as we go through. But the opening says, when I assumed the role of superintendent on July 1st, just so you know, I was both excited and apprehensive, and I put that right in there. The district had endured years of turmoil, and there was a high leadership turnover. I walked into unresolved cases. I walked into fractured relationships, and it was kind of daunting. But understanding that there's resilience and that love is hard and love is kind, love is not fast. And so a shattered foundation isn't the end. It's actually the chance to rebuild stronger. And that actually sat and resonated with me, because to give sustainable change and transparency and trust, it's not about the quick fixes. It's not about overnight. and it actually is going to take a lot of hard work. And so I talk about the collective resolve, and I guess I knew coming in, based on the 4 questions, that nothing was going to be as easy as it seems. But I didn't realize some other things that was going to come forth through this. So what this meant for ARPS is that ARPS is at a turning point after years of instability and unresolved relationships. The foundation was cracked, but it wasn't demolished. There's actually enough pieces there that we can cast over and continue to build upon. And so it isn't the end, but it's actually an opportunity for a new beginning. Communication is something that we have to improve, and that's a growth area. And so that's why I guess one of the suggestions is over-communicate, but I'm also trying to deeply communicate as quickly and timely as possible. So if I know something, I'll address it. If I am questioned about something, I'll answer it. And so, and equity challenges must be tackled head-on. It's very, very clear to me that there is a level of concern around racial, sexuality, gender biases within the district, and trying to address them properly, but also knowing that transparent systems and written protocols are not consistent. And so that makes it hard for accountability. And so there is a strong reliance on past practice, whereas that has kind of placed some of the burden on the district as well. And for me, one of the things that we can look ahead for is that we should not be defined by our struggles, but by how we rise from them. And the best way to get around it or through it or to reach the end is to actually push on, and we need to be able to do that. Chapter 2 is our data chapter, and there is a host of data. We talk about our MCAS data, and I wanted to hit some of my reflections. So ARPS thrives on a shared commitment for academic excellence, equity, and sustainability. However, the tensions that I realized were that the decentralized structure of all the districts, which means that there's communication breakdowns, curricular inconsistencies across the schools, and in some lens, inequitable resource distribution. Disparities in the MCAS data among the some groups are highlighted. And we have some outdated facilities that reflect systemic challenges that need immediate attention. However, surprisingly enough, our children and our staff have a remarkable level of engagement and passion for learning. So that's evident in the enthusiasm for hands-on projects, creative clubs, and future-oriented programs in arts, sports, and leadership. And despite our operational challenges, the district structures support programs that foster identity development and holistic student growth. My worries are the attendance inconsistencies and achievement gaps and limited resources strain the district's ability to meet the needs of all their students. And so we talk a lot about equity, but we're not so much also talking about, we're straying away from equality, but we need to talk more about what it looks like for equity. And our complex fiscal and curricular structures create inefficiencies in implementation and decision-making. This is a worry for me, and so it kind of requires us to improve our coordination and clearer protocols across all of the schools. So I wanted to make sure that we highlighted our student voice, and so there were some student surveys that went out. And in elementary school, we surveyed our 4th graders. We figured they sat at the cusp of where they're no longer in primary grades, but they're transitioning into, they're in intermediate. In middle school, we surveyed all our 8th graders, and in high school, we surveyed our juniors, our 11th graders. Some things that stood out to me from the elementary student surveys were improvements, and there were various themes and best times, but 2 things that stood out was interactive and engaging learning. The responses reflected an appreciation for interactive learning methods in comparison to traditional. So our elementary teachers actually are diversifying or differentiating the way how they approach learning for our students. And our students recognize that. Whether it's technology integration, engaging lesson plans, students recognize that. They also recognize that they wanted 5-star meals and that better overall food options, including vegetarian alternatives and more sweet treats, were something that they felt needed to happen in elementary schools. So I just want you to say, like, our children are aware of what's happening. But in terms of what is your favorite thing to do at school and why, Some of the themes came up in elementary was sports and physical activities, reading and literature, arts and creative expression, technology and modern learning, interactive and engaging learning. And when we asked them what could make your school day even better, outside of enhancing lunch, they wanted increased outdoor and research time, more creative and engaging learning activities outside of what they already have, and additional reading and writing time, and improved social interactions with friends. Our middle school survey, the two key things that stood out for me, one was club involvement and leadership opportunities. The students highlighted the fact that they liked the clubs. For example, they liked student council and POCU, and they served as platform for students to express their opinions, connect with their peers, and become involved. It illustrated our students enjoy taking on responsibilities and planning events that kind of gave them that advocate voice for what was happening and impacting their school community. They had they had a dislike with their day 7 schedule. And a common complaint was about the day 7 schedule, which many students believe disrupted their learning experience. Numerous respondents expressed that this day is disorienting and takes away valuable time needed to complete homework and study effectively. So they actually wanted to remove part of the schedule component. And it also speaks to a larger theme of needing to organize and structure the school day to facilitate better educational outcomes. So when they were prompted what changes could make your school experience more enjoyable or help you, flexibility in learning environment, abolishing day 7 schedule, increased breaks and outdoor time, improvement of school food quality. They really stuck it in between elementary and middle school about meals, and then supportive and engaging teacher interactions. What's your favorite club, class, or activity at school, and what do you enjoy most about it? Peer interaction and socialization, supportive and engaging educators, and they really loved the different hands-on and creative club activities that were offered to them. High school student surveys are 11th graders. We asked them about scheduling conflicts and restrictions came up. And it says, despite the appreciation for the flexibility, several students expressed frustration with the restriction placed on them during the flex block period. Issues arise when respondents have multiple obligations for classes overlapping in the same time frame. For instance, students mentioned needing to attend a required music class or facing conflicts with existing tests that fall during flex time. So the use of the flex block didn't really resonate with the 11th graders in terms of the flexibility and their actual opportunity for student choice. They actually said the perception of being locked in to certain classes or requirements can detract from the intended purpose of the flex block and led to added stress for them. And so teacher influence, they talked about the roles of teachers as a crucial theme. And it says many of them praise their educators and who engage them in their subjects. And there were individuals that the theme that highlights the pivotal role in terms of the dedicated educators in fostering student engagement. Asking them about the flex block, use the space to describe just the flex block. The themes were flexibility and student choice, impact on academic stress for students, scheduling conflicts and restrictions, general sentiment towards structure. There was an issue in terms of the structure of it, and senior privileges and autonomy. It showed up where students were actually very cognizant of the fact that seniors had the opportunity to leave, whereas others did not have that autonomy. And it kind of, we needed to align that and structure that. Teacher and staff surveys, we had about 181 respondents in terms of our teacher and staff surveys. And so one of the key things that stood out is communication and collaboration. Open communication emerged as a crucial theme with teachers and staff, importance of being included in the decision-making process, and that's where a lot of things have been going out for feedback. I think that what we can do better is kind of put on it, hey, feedback session, and communicate better around that. But they highlighted the need for transparent and clear communication. And then lack of transparency is one of their biggest concerns. And they highlighted that issues such as inconsistent leadership, nepotism, favoritism, and retaliation have pointed to a culture where decisions are made without clear communication and equitable treatment. And so they asked for a shared vision, concrete guidance, and reluctance to address persistent disruptive behavior without consequences. Again, That was one that stood out to me. The reluctance to address persistent disruptive behaviors without consequences contribute to a sense of mistrust among staff members. And the high turnover in administration and inadequate training for new educators exacerbate challenges. The caregivers and community survey, I'm just going to pull out specific things that I saw. Insufficient support for neurodivergent students. Parents articulated their dissatisfaction with a perceived lack of understanding from staff about learning disabilities, resulting in inadequate accommodations and individualized support, particularly for students with IEPs. They were asking for more direct and honest communication. Parents want straightforward answers to their inquiries, particularly when it concerns incidents or changes that may affect their child. This includes concerns about behavior, academic performance, and safety issues. And the need for improved communication. Many parents reported feeling uninformed about what their children are learning, making it challenging to reinforce academic concepts outside of school. There were requests for regular newsletters, emails, and specific details on assignments and class objectives to foster a stronger partnership between families and educators. And so again, just summarizing some key things around what it means for ARPS. Looking forward, I think we need to consider data-driven lesson planning, investigate attendance tracking systems, foster collaboration with families and students to build trust and enhance engagement and create culturally relevant learning environments. Chapter 3 highlights the division audits and school level highlights. There are a lot of strengths in our schools and areas of growth as well as paths forward, and I just put brief observations for each school on there. And I want to talk about the district offices. And so if you want to follow along, you can. So there are key strengths and areas of growth, key findings. For example, our family center. The family center staff demonstrate versatility and adaptability, but clearer role definitions would enhance efficiency and impact. Integrating family center operations more closely with school-based initiatives could amplify direct support for families. The strengths, of course, there's a dedicated staff to supporting families and fostering positive relationships within the school and community. The center is viewed as a trusted resource by families who rely on its program for connection and assistance. Areas of growth, improve equity in service delivery by ensuring all families across schools and districts have access to programs and resources. Implement a data tracking system to evaluate the impact of programs and guide decision-making for future initiatives, and assess school-based staffing opportunities to reduce workload and provide more comprehensive individualized support for families. Our business office financial practices are being improved, but budget processes reveal inconsistencies and lack of alignment with district priorities. Paper-based systems, while functional, hinder accuracy and create challenges in record keeping and timely decision-making. But there are strengths where the business office staff are dedicated and responsive, demonstrating a willingness to improve systems and processes. Foundational systems for budget and fiscal management exist, offering a strong starting point for modernization and improvement. And there is recognition within the office of the need to adopt best practices and implement sustainable financial solutions. Facilities and transportation, key findings, this division faces staffing shortages, particularly for bus drivers and tradespersons, affecting schedule reliability and building maintenance. Facility rental management practices require greater oversight and coordination to optimize usage and revenue. Custodial staff levels are insufficient to adequately clean and maintain buildings, impacting overall cleanliness and functionality. Current routing and scheduling systems for transportation could be optimized to improve efficiency and reduce delays. Underfunding of transportation and facilities operations impact fleet maintenance, custodial services, and the ability to address deferred maintenance projects. The strengths are our transportation and facility staff are all highly dedicated and maintaining operational continuity despite staffing and funding challenges. Their efforts ensure vehicles and buildings remain functional, demonstrating staff commitment to keeping services running. Opportunities exist to modernize processes for routing, scheduling, and facilities rental, which could improve efficiency and fiscal outcomes. Our food services. This department actually demonstrates Strong fiscal management, ensuring resources are allocated effectively while maintaining cost efficiency. Accurate and consistent data collection practices of tracking meal participation rates and program impact. Staff shortages in key roles limit the department's ability to operate at full capacity, and facilities and equipment in some schools require updates to improve efficiency and food preparation quality. The strengths is fiscal management practices are robust, comprehensive data collection provides valuable insights, food service staff are committed to delivering nutritious meals and adapting to student dietary preferences, and the department has strong foundation for compliance with state and federal regulations. Human resources. A key finding, sad but true, is that the human resources trust between human resources and the district is the most broken of all divisions in central office, significantly impacting relationships and operational effectiveness. High staff turnover has created challenges in maintaining institutional knowledge and consistency across the district. The absence of a centralized system for handling labor relations and investigation increases workload and delays resolution timelines. Professional development opportunities are inconsistently aligned with staff needs and district goals, reducing their overall impact. The strengths are that the HR staff demonstrate dedication and resilience in navigating the complexity of district hiring and even more so compliance needs. Recent efforts to consolidate roles and enhance operational efficiency are laying a foundation for improved practices. The department supports diverse hiring practices, aligning with ARP's commitment to equity and inclusivity, and they are proactively seeking grants to increase and support the teacher diversification. Mental health and behavioral services. This is a newly developed division providing a foundation for addressing critical student needs. Policies and procedures are in early stages and require firming up to ensure consistency and clear operational guidelines. Data tracking for student progress and program effectiveness is currently underdeveloped, and though the need for services is evident across all schools. Strong potential exists for this division to play a key role in fostering student well-being and addressing behavioral challenges holistically. The dynamic nature of mental health support requires fluidity and consistent updates to remain responsive to student and community needs. There are strengths in this division. The establishment reflects a forward-thinking approach to addressing students' mental health and behavioral needs proactively. Staff demonstrate a deep commitment to supporting student well-being and creating safe, inclusive environments for all. Initial collaboration with schools and families has laid the groundwork for building strong relationships and community trust. Opportunities exist to align the division's goals with district-wide equity initiatives, ensuring services reach all students effectively. The Office of Teaching and Learning has been instrumental in supporting the district's instructional practices. The audit revealed inconsistencies in the curriculum implementation, a lack of coherence across schools, and varied use of data to inform instruction. Critical positions in this division are not full-time, limiting the department's capacity and increasing costs for critical summer work. They have assumed responsibilities more appropriately managed by schools or other departments, further constraining its abilities to focus on strategic district-level initiatives. The strengths are that OTL is supported by a dedicated team with strong grant writing capabilities, securing resources that benefit the entire district. The department collaborates effectively with other central office teams and consistently provides direct supports to schools. Recent efforts to implement high-quality instructional materials at elementary schools demonstrates the department's commitment to equity and improving student outcomes. Student services. Student services provide essential support for students in special education, 504 and related services, ensuring compliance. A high number of students receive one-to-one services, raising questions about the effectiveness of scaffolded interventions and supports prior to IEP identification. Staffing shortages, particularly among special education teachers and related service providers, limit the division's capacity to meet student needs effectively. Processes for IEPs and 504s require greater consistency and documentation to improve efficiency and ensure equity in service delivery. And our data systems for monitoring student progress and evaluating service effectiveness could be better utilized to increase opportunities for program improvement. Staff, the strengths are staff are highly dedicated to supporting students with diverse needs. The division demonstrates a strong commitment to meeting the needs of neurodivergent students, fostering inclusive practices, and tailored supports that promote their success. The division demonstrates strong foundational knowledge of legal compliance and diligently adheres to federal and state mandates. In the appendices, but also in the findings, there is a special education program review that was done around Amherst Pelham Regional School District that also includes findings around, and that's in that the full copy of that program review is in the back end, but a summary page is on page 57. IT or IS, the division is hardworking and responsive, maintaining operational continuity despite resource challenges. Limited staff capacity offers room to expand and develop specialized roles to better meet the district's technological needs. IS staff brings diverse skills and strengths, providing a foundation for future innovation and growth. Underfunding presents an opportunity to prioritize investments in technology, infrastructure, and resources to align with district goals. The strengths are that IS staff demonstrate dedication, adaptability, and a strong commitment. The varied skills within the team allow for innovative problem solving and support for critical functions. Effective management of existing systems has ensured operational stability and provided baseline for improvement. There is significant potential to align IS advancements with instructional and operational district-wide goals. And what does this mean for ARPS? We are staffed with dedicated, hardworking individuals committed to supporting students. There are growth areas. We need to modernize our system and processes. We need to address staffing shortages and strengthen recruitment. We need to develop standardized protocols and data systems across the divisions. We need to expand communication and engagement efforts to rebuild trust with families, staff, and the community. And so in chapter 4, pages 60 to 61, we summarize the strengths and challenges, but I'm presenting it a little bit different here because like I talked about, I'm going to use the executive summary to kind of encompass the strengths and challenges. And so there are key areas of growth and positivity, and this quotation comes straight from the executive summary, which says, ARP stands at a pivotal moment, a chance to rebuild stronger systems rooted in trust, equity, and collaboration. By addressing challenges head-on and leveraging our community's creative resilience and dedication, we can create a district or districts that serve all students together. Alone, we can do so little. Together, we can do so much. Let's harness the collective resolve. Our strengths are, we have creative and resilient students, equity-focused vision, strong community support, staff expertise and adaptability, creative programs, and dedicated leadership. Key areas of concern and insight. Perhaps most concerning is the culture of skepticism that has developed due to frequent leadership turnover. A pattern of waiting out leadership has emerged, accompanied by a playbook of strategies to discredit and remove leaders. This cycle stifles progress and creates a sense of instability that permeates the districts. Breaking this cycle will require not only building trust, but also establishing systems that outlast individual leaders. We can't fear change because it disrupts comfort, I've said repeatedly. True progress requires collective effort and resilience. And this quote came because in 2022, again, coming into the district, I did a lot of research and I read and I pulled and I know I've publicly stated before that there was not much onboarding done in terms of sharing information. And I have to say I'm thankful to the staff, principals, teachers who have shared information, reading the binders that have been left in the office, committee members, you have shared information, whether it's news reports or even documents that you have. And that has helped me in my research and my Saturdays and Sundays of working in the office in terms of creating my own onboarding and presenting these findings. And one of the things that was found was a study that was actually done in the district in 2022 about supporting and retaining school leaders. And this study is attached to the whole document. But what became very enlightening was how the study called forth in terms of the role of identity, in terms of some critical findings around public criticism can turn personal. And many individuals highlighted that it's very often, it is worth noting that the longest serving administrators are male in the district, and it specifically says it is worth noting that the longest serving administrators are all white men. It is also noteworthy that most of the principals who have left the district have been women. There was conversation about the BIPOC leaders, and others felt that issues, particularly for women leaders, were more pronounced in these districts. And so I think that it's an interesting read. And it's an interesting read because it actually highlighted some of the things that I have experienced in my transition into leadership into the district, as well as some onboarding suggestions for any future leader that comes into the district around supports and understanding how to make an entry in. And so some of the challenges that are there are that I found in the findings. Outside of communication, we have our aging infrastructure, which is deferred maintenance and outdated facilities hinder the ability to provide safe and modern and effective learning environments. Establishing clear protocols. There is actually a practice of having past practice be like it is everything. And I think that because we do not have clear, updated policies and protocols and procedures in place that are written and documented, that has placed our district at in some of the legal ramifications that it has been faced with. And for me, I am not going to be reactionary to hearsay. I am going to take the time to, as one of the quotes had said, trust but verify. I am going to also look for that documentation, but we are going to start to develop those procedures and protocols and write them and share them and vet them, because that's what's going to keep us in alignment and not have things shifting from day to day. Which goes into building a culture of accountability and integrity. The district faces challenges in ensuring consistent professionalism, responsibility, and confidentiality, to include protecting the privacy of students and staff. And this helps to foster trust and collaboration. Communication is key. I talk about it in my summary, that we need transparency and honesty, not surprises. And in my one-on-ones, stakeholders and meetings, that is actually something that came forward. Budget and fiscal sustainability. When I entered here, there are things in terms of financial management that I met. There are fiscal practices that I met. There were payroll errors that I made that I met. There were unclear budgeting practices and questions around the budget and how things were moving that I met. There were practices, for example, with our supplemental or our AAC contracts, where they were folded into salaries, and there was an eroded trust in terms of fiscal management between district employees and the district. And so there were a lot of things that I met that we as a team are now trying to clarify and to bring forward and to show true transparency in terms of how do we get from a place to where we can actually feel like we're transitioning into fiscal sustainability in the long run. And that is a challenge that we are going to face and we're facing. We talked about that earlier with our different debriefs. Closing achievement gaps. Advancing students without ensuring mastery of grade level standards has widened disparities, particularly for marginalized students, emphasizing the need for targeted supports. And embracing change and equity with a unified vision is going to be a challenge, because what that was highlighted in the stakeholder input prior to me coming in, it was highlighted in the study that was done, and it's highlighted even in some of the initial practices and opportunities to implement things for with the children in mind at the forefront. And I think that's the one thing that everyone needs to consistently know about me. Every decision that I am going to make is not going to be one that is going to be haphazardly done. But at the end point of my lens is children. I am student focused. I am looking at what would be in the best intent for our students. And the hard truth of it is that there is a reluctance, I'm going to read this statement, is that I think that, or say this, is that I think that everyone wanted change, but wasn't fully aware of how it would affect their comfort. And so when things come in, when you have to delve into shifting the budget, when you have to delve into putting protocols in place, there's a comfort level that's going to be flexed upon. And it's not for lack of clarity. I'm always willing to give clarity. I'm always willing to over communicate. But more so than that, what it's there is embracing the change and knowing that it's through an equity lens. And so how do we get there? And so the major themes that came up throughout all of this, throughout all of my findings, was student-centered focus, strengthening accountability and transparency, sustaining financial stability, sustaining it, not creating, sustain, but sustaining financial stability, embracing change and innovation. We really need to shift mindsets, addressing operational efficiencies, modernizing our systems, fostering equity and inclusion, enhancing communication and engagement, and building capacity and resilience. And so these are findings. These are collecting data, qualitative, quantitative, having conversations. These are findings. And like I said, the findings are presented here, but I'm also going to talk about strategies that we can put in place. And it's not so much that these are the right or the wrong things, but these are suggested ways for us to come together. And there are more things and more conversations that need to be had to move forward. But some district strategies that I think would help us to collectively kind of guide together and work out, and it may or may not work, it has to come through the team, is building a unified definition of equity. And everyone is talking about equity, but we haven't defined it. And some strategies that may work to build that is creating a portrait of a graduate, creating a portrait of an educator, and more so a district improvement plan, all to guide our practices. Enhancing our educational supports, exploring opportunities to strengthen our interventions, leveraging data for equity, right-sizing the organization and kind of streamlining our administrative functions, kind of optimizing our staff roles, modernizing our systems and processes to kind of reduce our errors and redundancies and improve efficiency, strengthening our fiscal sustainability by addressing and assessing our budgeting practices, and more so engaging families and community partners. And the conclusion, and I just want to read common parts, is this report marks the beginning of a new chapter for ARPS. It reflects both the challenges we face and the tremendous potential we have to rebuild a stronger, more equitable district. The path forward will require courage, collaboration, and a shared commitment to the work ahead. While the foundation of ARPS may have been shaken in recent years, it is clear to me that the collective resolve of this community is stronger than any challenge we face. And as I've said many times, we are not defined by our struggles, but how we rise from them. The findings presented here offer a roadmap for that rise, drawing on data, conversations, and shared aspirations. And I encourage every reader to engage deeply with these findings, recognizing the collective resolve and potential within this community, because with trust, accountability, and collaboration as our guiding principles, I firmly believe that Amherst, Pelham, and Amherst-Pelham Regional School Districts can become model for excellence in public education. Together we can rebuild not just what we lost, but something greater, a district or districts that truly serve all children. Thank you.
My bad. Thank you so much, Dr. Z. My goodness. We'll open it up for questions now. Anyone? Don't know where to begin? Did I?
No, let me
What?
help you.
Oh. I'll just lean way forward. Well, maybe I'll start just by saying what a fantastic, sorry, okay.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, what a tremendous resource this document is, and an amazing amount of work really digging into and laying out what we are and where we are. And I thank you very much for that. I've never seen anything like this about our schools.
Thank you.
So it's going to be a very useful document for years, I think. Deb?
So my first thought was, when do you sleep? And yes, it's both comprehensive, extensive, it's broad, it's deep. Leaves me wondering where to go next. You have some strategies, of course, but in my time as a short time as a school committee member, I've learned that SMART goals are the ways to analyze or address any kind of school-related progress. And so some of them are easier than others, of course, but things like climate and, the kids are never going to be happy with this food. But I've always struggled with this kind of certain kinds of surveying, because where do you go from there? So those are just thoughts that you don't need to address right away, but certainly if you have any thoughts that you want to bounce back, go right ahead.
I think that it's very easy to look at it as an individual and say, oh, you can do this, you can do this, you can do this, you can do this. But when I started off, the one thing I said is that I'm going to lead the district. I'm not going to do it on my own. And so it actually I mean that it's a collective resolve. I feel like the directors for each division need an opportunity to delve more deeply into the areas of growth and to talk about what they've done and what they're doing. And for some of them, they've already started that work because as we've done audits, as we've done conversations, as we've been moving, they've already started, whether it's the data collection. For example, IS has already started, and the update today was around, working with the vendor for the data dashboard and starting to kind of create and formulate those areas. I believe in speaking to Maureen, there's some work that has been done in terms of their platform. And so a lot of the work has started, and it's not everything that I'm going to do alone. I think that what I also feel like is trying to navigate the culture, and the hard part is that change is not easy. And so I kind of have been using this umbrella analogy as a superintendent a lot lately, where I'm saying that I'm the tip of the umbrella, I'm at the top, and then there's spokes coming down. So everyone sees their lens and their limb, but I'm the person that has to see that whole picture and connect it together. And so it's really, how do we drive that whole? How do we create that cohesion as a team? There's some work that the principals have to do. There's some work that educators and teachers have to do. There's some work that, like I said, directors have to do. And there's some work that I have to do. And so for me, I really think like step one may be creating that portrait of a graduate, creating that portrait of an educator, creating that unified definition of equity, so that we all are kind of driving towards the same thing. But I also would like to note that I am learning that too many things at one time is often difficult, even as simple as that thing may be or should be. So I don't have a set step forward, but I think I have a dynamic team. And I think that my team will learn me in that, one, I'm very direct. I say what I need and I say what I mean. But two, that we have to do it together. And it'll also mean that every voice in the room has to be heard and counted for. So hopefully in some time we'll have an improvement plan that would outline those steps. That's a possible strategy. They might decide they just want to do a strategic plan. We could figure that all out. But I think that unified vision would be step one.
Thank you. Jennifer?
Thank you for this remarkable report. I'm looking forward to digging into it more deeply. I'm impressed, not surprised, but impressed at how perceptive you are and how you have come in and that you have seen. You've seen what the issues are and are able to are also able to propose and think about solutions to them. So I really appreciate that. I also see you recognizing talent in others and empowering other people on your team as well as in the staff. I see you distributing power, not hoarding power. And as one example is the calendar committee, where people are like, we've never had a committee before, and you're saying, well, we should all have input. So I really appreciate that. I'm glad that you mentioned that report about supporting school leaders. That was presented in one of my very first school committee meetings, one of my first meetings as a school committee member. And I remember the quote about the longest serving administrators are white men, and women leaders are more likely to leave. One of the questions I asked the consultant who did that report was, okay, so you've identified this problem. What are some suggestions of how women leaders specifically can be supported? And the answer was, oh yeah, we should have done that, but we didn't put anything in the report. So I hope that as you're going through and recognizing these issues, that you have some supports for women leaders.
As a woman leader, first thing I would like to say is that in any arena, I think, and I don't know if it was studied, I have been doing some research on reading. It's often harder, a little bit difficult to step in after a man has left. You start to notice that the questioning or the pushback that a male would not receive, you receive as a female. And I try not to delve into, well, I wonder if I was a guy, if this would have been the perception. And then I feel like, okay, well, maybe I've built such a great enough comfort level that that's what it is. But even in recent, just watching how things, and again, I wasn't here, right? And so I'm learning, I'm seeing, I'm observing, I'm looking at the historicals of the cases and seeing how things are moving. And it's, to me, I think as a female, you have to just be resolute in that you're going to build your practice and your brand, right? And that you have to be vulnerable and open enough to understand that courageous leadership for a female is different than courageous leadership for a male. And a part of that is standing in the fact that you're open, you're transparent. You're not going to lean into the stigma, or even if someone tries to put you in a persona, to sit within that, like know who you are. And so for me, I think that there may not be a set guide for women in leadership when they enter into this district. I think there needs to be a set guide for women in leadership, period. But the strongest and the most critical part for me is don't lean into anyone else's stereotype. Be true to yourself. Continue to hold your core values at the forefront of what you do. And I will always hold being student-centered as my core value. I think that for me entering into this, a lot of it was never this way before, but my knowledge base is different. My experience is different. My training is different. My understanding of how a district is supposed to run is different. And not because I've come in and I've made a suggestion to improve or shift a practice means that I'm trying to disrespect that practice. It actually means that there's actually a gap that we are trying to fill. And so for me, it is like, I'm not even worried about just being a female. I'm not worried about being a black female. I'm not worried about any of those things. I'm worried about the fact that, is there a persona that's put forth around what individuals feel a superintendent is supposed to be, and are putting me in that box without giving me the opportunity to prove the superintendent that I am or I aim to be in this district. And I think that that's the part of it that gets me right now. It's the fact that this is my second superintendency, but outside of that, just being in a district where you're trying to have the conversation with individuals about opportunities to shift and grow, and listening to every voice. When you have listening lounges and you hear parents talking about the concerns about academic rigor, or you have individuals who are saying, well, I don't really understand the elementary report card that's 15 to 17 or 18 pages. And then you try and make a shift, but the educators are like, but we've done this all the time, always. Like, I have to walk the line of how do we actually make a system that works for children? And it's a three-legged stool. It's the parent, the community, and the educator. Like, we have to do this together. And so that's what I would say for women leaders. Like, stand firm in who you are, be open, My concern is not just whether I'm a female or not. My concern is literally what I said, the playbook. And some of the suggestions or things in terms of practice, like it's not professional attacks, it becomes personal attacks. I have an open door, like, I have been caught into more, I'm not usually a meeting person. I'm usually a person who is like in schools, doing walkthroughs. But then I know there's meetings that have to be done, and creating the time to do that. And so for me, it's how do we get individuals out of that comfort level that change is not an attack. And I think the hardest part is that the community is one that is big on acceptance of diversity. But the reflection or the feeling is that may not always be, the acceptance is not often a two-way street from everyone. And it's like, you want me to understand your perspective and your point of view, but are you willing to hear mine? And that's the part where I think I'm trying to get through with various stakeholders.
Irv, did you have a question or a comment?
Not at this time, but I will momentarily.
Okay, all right. Bridget?
Yeah, so, well, thank you for this. It's a lot of work, and I really appreciate everything that you put into it, and sort of the big picture, the insightful, and sort of setting the vision, coming to these strategies at the end, which seem to make a lot of sense to me. Portrait of the graduate, portrait of an educator, the district and school improvement plans, and something that I feel like came up over and over across divisions, like what are the systems, what are the structures, what are the workflows, how do these move regardless of who's in that place, that this is what people do. And I know that when we're talking about like all the great progress we've made, like in terms of putting a bullying system into place, about having updated policies and procedures, but if people aren't following through, if the frontline folks aren't reporting into that system, then we're stuck. So I really appreciate sort of your awareness and noticing about those patterns, and I'm sure what comes next is getting with it,
Work.
like that will flow down and people will start to get with it. I had a couple of questions as I came through. The first one is just like, it's really interesting, all the data you got and the surveys and the things you collected, and I love that, and I'm a big fan of raw data. So I'm just wondering, how did you like decide the snippets, notice the patterns? Like, did you use a certain type of tool to analyze, or like, how did you come up with what you presented us here from the survey data?
I decided to pick the ones that stood out the most to me. And that resonated with some of the work that we're currently working on right now in the community as well. And more so, I looked at the common themes that bubbled up towards the end, and that hitting the key points and not making this a 6-hour presentation. Just trying to hit the key things that hit into the main themes so that's how I did it. The ones that resonated the most to me, but also that bubbled up towards like the main themes that we saw throughout the thread that wove throughout the whole report of entry.
My second thing is just a comment, which is I noticed on the facilities director page some of the strengths and weaknesses, and I just wanted to point out, like the school committee and the town, we have a sustainability set of guidelines, a set of procedures, a desire to be working towards sustainability, especially in operating, wherever it can reduce our costs, but even just as a generalized practice, and I didn't see that at all on that particular page.
Okay.
And the really last thing that I thought of, and I've been thinking about this a lot, because I'm going into school buildings and you're seeing people you got used to seeing for a long time, and they're gone. And I know someone at the middle school told me a couple of weeks ago that like, oh, this is the first week I haven't gone into work and someone else was gone. And then I was juxtaposing that with like what we talked about at the budget meeting, where you're saying like, I don't want to bring in anyone to say like, okay, well, but your job may be gone in the fall. And so I'm wondering, how are decisions being made about who's being brought in? What's the process for hiring folks given that there's, some of those positions are gonna need to be filled, some things are, but yet we have this budget freeze really sort of on hiring, and I'm just, it's such a tension, and I'm wondering how you're dealing with it.
So, staff attrition is an issue. Staff retention, yeah, is an issue. One of the things that, and we had this discussion today in our SBT meeting, was around reading through the exit surveys to kind of see why they're leaving. So I am asking the community or individuals that have left to please complete the exit survey. Some do. So we can look into that. And start to kind of see what we can, what can we do differently to retain staff. The process for hiring at the school level is actually the principal actually interviews individuals, and then they select, and then I give my final like, hey, yep, this is great, this person is good afterwards. But we've been posting positions basically as interim or 1 year. Because again, if we have to rift anyone, then we have to let go who do not have seniority.
Just one quick follow-up on that, like I remember you saying about the contracts with student support and student services, and like a lot of that goes through central office, so how are you all deciding like who to hire, how to bring on in that regard?
So in terms of SSO, in terms of IEPs,
I guess, or you know how a lot
so
of those
right, so
are in the
students
central
have
office budget.
that actually comes out of our special education portion of the budget. And so we end up contracting services because we don't have individuals. So for example, speech language pathologists, if we don't have someone, speech language pathologist, I know is like the most prevalent one. And if we don't have someone, for example, in OT, like any of those related service providers, we then get a contract out and contract someone to come in and give those students those services based on their IEPs. So we don't have to kind of also do compensatory time.
We have like standing ads for those folks, or like, are we trying to actively hire? And if
So
someone
the
wanted
positions
to-
there are some positions that were posted and it takes very long to fill. But Doreen and her team actually have a system, I think, in place to bring individuals in. She has been very, very creative in the past couple of weeks, especially with our budget crunch, in trying to actively come up with ways to address concerns, to address student needs, and to meet the needs of our upcoming population.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Margaret?
First, I would just want to say that I really appreciate your commitment to our students and to our schools.
Thank you.
I think that you have exhibited that in lots of ways since you've been here. And I really like hearing you talk about consistent procedures and transparency, because I think those are things that will really, across the board, lead to some of the things that you're talking about: staff retention, absenteeism. If people know what's supposed to happen and they have a say in figuring out what's supposed to happen, they're going to become invested. And we really need that. So I appreciate the things that you've said tonight.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Last chance. I'm sure all committees will be speaking more about the findings.
No,
Yes.
never.
Now, Irv? Yeah?
Yes. Dr. Z, I really congratulate you on this. I've been going through this report, and I'm bleary-eyed. And I've said this before, and organizational development, you are a thorough professional in terms of how you come into this organization, how you went about diagnosing what is right, what is wrong, what needs to be done. All of those things are, professionally are right on target. One of the things when going through your report that stands out and has stood out before, and I've commented on before, is that the incredible glaring need schools. I continue to be really, really upset about it when I look at the data. And the question in my mind is, now that we have this data, we know that it's there, it's student focused. If there's student focus, then it means that we should be focusing upon those students who are literally being left behind. The least of these should be focused upon. These disparities should not continue to resonate across the grade levels from elementary school through middle school through high school. As far as I'm concerned, that is the number one priority of us as educators in this district, is addressing that, coming up with strategies and tactics to be able to deal with them in a successful manner. That is really critical for me. And I'm hoping that that gets addressed this year and in the future years of your tenure. I would also like to point out that the surveys that you've done, it's sort of remarkable how when we look at the surveys and the results of the surveys and the participation level, by the way, the participation level by staff and faculty, I thought was extraordinary. Usually you get maybe 30% participation rate, but yours were way up there. So I congratulate you on that. I would like to make sure that the school committee remains a partner with you as you go through this. I also resonate with your statement about trust and verify. That's what this school committee needs to do all down the line, is to trust but verify. And trusting and verifying is not an attack on personality. It is a salute and a requirement of good governance.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. I see no more hands up, so I think we've concluded this agenda item and therefore this joint meeting. If
I move to adjourn the Pelham School Committee.
Second.
All those in favor? Pelham is adjourned.
I move to adjourn the regional school committee.
I second.
Deb,
Yes.
Sarah,
yes.
Tillman,
Yes.
Jennifer,
Yes.
Anna,
Yes.
Bridget,
Yes.
William,
Yes.
Irv,
Yes.
Sarah Beth. We are adjourned.
Thank you. So Amherst remains in session, but I would propose we take a 5-minute break. Okay? So that means please return, call it 8:15. All right, Amherst School Committee is back in session. I want to ask members to help me notice when Irv has his hand raised. It's really hard for me to
Can
see
you
that.
tell me what that looks like? Because I thought it
I-
was one thing, and now I think it's something else.
Yeah,
Over
tiny
there?
little thing over there on the left, so, all
Okay.
right, thank you.
No,
What'd
we're
you
all
say?
here.
Everyone, this is just Amherst now. Yeah.
You're the fifth
You're the-
person.
I see 1, 2, 3, and then I'm
Well, Deb, Sarah, Jennifer, and Bridget. Do you see Bridget?
Bridget, I don't see Bridget at all.
Okay.
What's your view?
That's, okay, she's here. All right, first item, superintendent, you don't have to come to the front table unless you wish to. Update on several items of continuing interest.
Several items of continuing interest. All right. Did I turn it off? I turned it off. It's me. All right. So good evening. Is my mic on? Good. As always, our district priorities: student safety and well-being, healing and stabilization of the district, and data and accountability for equity. And of course, we always ground our work in these three critical areas as we move forward. So our update today, I'm going to make it kind of short because I think I've talked a lot. And so we'll be going through our theme. I wanted to circle back and say thank you to our chair for coming in and highlighting Dinez, Superintendent of the Day in American Education Week. Dinez is a student at Wildwood, and he wanted to see what it was like to enact change and to be a superintendent for the day, and it was a great day. So I wanted to go ahead and just highlight him because I did not get to highlight our Amherst superintendent for the day. Inside an Amherst classroom, and so in the past couple of weeks, students in Amherst got the opportunity to learn about native wildlife from a grant that allowed the visiting of the Hitchcock Center staff. And in elementary schools, they got to learn more about American history. And so here is, pictures of what's happening inside of an Amherst classroom. And so, of course, we want to highlight that for the community. Getting into the big ticket items, our budget for FY26, and I know that we printed out just the budgetary page for you. And so some of the assumptions and unknowns that we're facing, very similar to the region. We're applying $750,000 for school choice, $185,000 UMass support for the strategic partnership. Our circuit breaker has been applied. We estimated 13% in health insurance, estimated 10% increase in transportation costs. We assumed 3% increase over FY25 from the town of Amherst based on our attendance at some of the FinCom meetings and town meetings. And we are accounting for steps or COLAs for union negotiations. We've also met with all departments and school leaders. I'm going to say that the Amherst principal meetings are earlier in the process than our region meetings were, and it's because we kind of started on the region budget a lot earlier, and at that time the gaps in the region or deficit in the region was much larger. We have been, for this year, our FY26 projection. As you can see, we have the actual for the last 5 years. And for this year, in terms of our FY26 projected, we're looking at a year-over-year a $2.2 million increase. However, a 2.3 when we round up $1 million increase, which is at 8.5%. However, the town budget target would come in at $27,779,532,000. And with our projected needs for FY26, which is $29,257,675, we would be at a deficit of 1.4, well, round up 1.5 million, $1,478,143. As I stated, Shannon and I and the team, Shannon, Kate, and the team have met with all departments all school leaders, and we are looking at how we can enact some efficiencies to meet this projected deficit. So strategies very similar to that of the region to close the gap. We're looking at staffing optimization, program review and design, potential transportation costs. We're looking at alternative grants and income streams, and even our facilities management. One of the key things as we talk into, and I don't know if you want to stop and then come back, I can move forward and come back. We
Why don't you
also,
go through,
okay.
yeah.
So, because this is actually, I think, my last slide. So the next steps in terms of our sixth grade move, Fort River capacity and redistricting, and I'll address each of the three. So sixth grade will not be moving this upcoming school year. We actually are going to start in the spring of 2025, which is when we return back. I'm going to start meeting with principals, district team to kind of plan out and sketch out what this would look like. These three things, actually two things, the sixth grade move and redistricting, as well as Fort River capacity, all go hand in hand. One, with the opening of the new Fort River or the new school, there is going to be a semblance of redistricting that would have to be done because we are going from 3 school buildings to 2 school buildings. It actually would behoove us to also determine where we would shift programming. For example, the Caminantes program, will that be housed in a new building or would that go to Crocker Farm? For this upcoming year, 25-26, Fort River will put together, and we've had conversations, I've had conversations with Tammy, as well as Katie, to determine what needs or what ways we can move our program forward so sixth grade can stay within the current Fort River school. Those conversations are still early, but for sixth grade will stay in Fort River. So for this upcoming year, they will remain. The concern was the number of classrooms needed, but I actually think with what we have started to work on, we will be able to accommodate the sixth grade this year to be able to move into the upcoming year, but it is kind of early in the planning phase before we can talk about that, but they will be staying there. So redistricting and sixth grade, I believe those conversations need to start now so that we are not blindsiding parents around in the next year or two where their students would be moving to and what that is going to look like and require. I also know that in our budgetary conversations, we're looking at transportation routes in terms of, we have situations where I have parents who have contacted me about the transfer buses and the concern with the loss of instructional time for students who have to go from Crocker Farm and Wildwood to Fort River on transfer buses because they're in the Caminantes programs. Those students actually arrive late to school every day and have to leave school early every day to go back to their schools. So there is about, on average, on a day, a student who takes a transfer bus actually loses an hour or so of instructional time. I'm going to round up, but I'm going to say 40 minutes to an hour because they arrive kind of late. And this started out with a parent sending this to me. I also had a conversation with Tammy. I've been looking at different, but it's something that has been in place, and so now we have to determine what would work best. And so we're looking at transportation routes, which is going to cause us to look at how the district is laid out. So in spring, we'll start a series, in January, we'll start to use as our leadership team times, whether it's the principal or elementary principal leadership team meetings, to start to hash out these concerns and start to cohesively create a plan that we can present to the committee about, 1, the sixth grade move, 2, redistricting, and then also work with the transportation and facilities department to lay out what are the best possible routes. And that's also going to come through as we work through our RFP for transportation. I'm hoping that those transportation routes can exact us some cost savings that would ease on our budget as well. And that's my short overview because I know we're going to delve into budget questions.
All right, Jennifer. Thank you, Dr. Z.
Thank you for that update. I do have questions about the budget. So first, when you say 750,000 of school choice has been applied and the 185 from UMass Sabars applied. How and where does that get applied? How is that reflected here?
That is a very good question that I don't have the answer to give you, and I don't want to give you the incorrect answer. But I'm sure that I can get that answer to you.
Okay, that would be great. I'll say that in the past, my understanding is it has been like applied to the salaries line. But then that sort of has always made me uncomfortable because then we don't actually know what the salaries line is. If we're just reducing the salaries line by that, that may or may not be true. So it would be great to find out how that gets applied.
So I'm going to say that what I've learned for a lot of different things recently is but in another instance on another budget, things were applied to the salaries line, right?
Yeah.
Out in personnel. That's one of the budgetary issues that we talked about in terms of the finding, is that many times things are used to balance off the budget at the end of the year. So you may not see it in the projections right now, but it actually is used to close out the budget or accounts. And that's why I would rather find and get the specific information as to how it's applied for
Okay,
you.
great.
I am not going to say that I do have concerns with how the salary line has been presented, and I've expressed this concern to my team. One of the things that comes in is we've been asked around, for example, our AACs, our stipends, our additional activities contract. That's not separated out in the previous or past budgets because it's often built into the salaries as a part of personnel salaries. So when individuals come in, they have a base salary, and then the additional activities contract is built in for some positions. So for example, department heads, it's already built in as a part of their base salary and different things, but it should actually be a separate line item that you can pinpoint in the budget and say this is the amount that's budgeted for. So I know that there was like a public records request specifically to say, well, how much do you budget for additional activities contracts? And it may have seemed small on the budgetary line, but that and it doesn't equate to what is actually there. That is because some of those costs are actually built into the salaries section or portions, not even full portions of the contract section. All right, so here's the answer. It's applied. I got service. I love it. Thank you, Shannon. It's applied to salaries, and we reduce payroll account line. The same thing that I said was the possible projection. So, again, that's where things are applied, and that's where we have to we're working on clearing that budgetary process up.
Yeah, just to follow up on that. So that's our past practice, and it's always sort of made me a little bit uncomfortable because then that's not actually, this line isn't actually a true reflection of how much we're paying in salaries. And also, like, we're applying 750 this year. We've applied like 800, 850 in past years. So then, like, comparing year to year is also not apples to apples. So I just wanted to ask if there's a way, or if you can work with Shannon of a way to, like, apply it on show it on its own line. Like a nonprofit would have a revenue section and an income section and an expense section. These are all expenses. We're not seeing where the revenues are. So I don't know if there's some way to be more clear about where the sources of income are, other than like having this total add up to what the town of Amherst is going to pay. Because this is obviously an Amherst budget, but it's confusing.
So what I was informed is that we cannot count it as revenue per se.
Okay.
So we reduce the account line, but I do know that perhaps maybe we need to do deeper delve into the research to see how else can we project it up on there and put it on the budgetary line so that it doesn't. I do know that there were some suggestions, and like I said, Shanna has been working with different district business officers to look at their budgets and how things are put forth. So she's paying very close attention to what's happening this evening. So we'll put that down on our list of things to kind of see, so that the committee can see where that is applied, or more so we can highlight it out in a way.
Great, thank you. I have questions about redistricting, but I assume we want to talk about the budget.
Why don't we, if we can, stick to budget for the moment? I have Deb, then Irv. Did you?
I
not?
didn't,
No?
but
Oh,
I'll go after Irv.
okay. Irv, then Deb.
So I sort of was taken by surprise, but I shouldn't have been surprised about the projected sense of when you will be able to give us some more concreteness about that number. And the reason I'm asking that question is because this is really not a palatable number by any stretch of the imagination. It just isn't. And given the other things that are going to be happening, it's almost like a perfect storm. We have a budget deficit, we have a sixth grade move, and we have a redistricting decision all coming up in 26. And that is something for everyone not to like you. So it you know, and when I say like you, I mean like us, because that is really a perfect storm. So I guess what I want to say is the more clarity we can get as we go forward, the better it is for all of us.
I agree. First thing that we have, there are three unknowns that we're still waiting on. The first is the health insurance, which we're not going to know until early February, I think end of January, early February. Right now we're projecting at 13%. We need a final percentage to determine what the impact truly would be. Like I said, I've been hoping for 9%, 10%, anything but the 13. Anything lower than 13. And so that's one. Two, our transportation RFP, which I believe January 15th is a date that's resonating in my mind. And so we have our pre-bidders meeting on Friday. It's going out to bid. Right now we're projecting that at a 10% increase. That's an unknown because, again, we're waiting to see what the final cost would be and who the final winning bidder would be. And the last one is our steps or COLAs based on our negotiations. And that our goal is March, I believe, March or April to finalize that. So, I mean, ideally it'll be March. So outside of the town giving us that 3%, and possibly if we can advocate for maybe another 0.5%, but we need to definitely know that there's a lot of unknowns, and those three critical unknowns, especially the health insurance, is one that's impacting where we are. So I think that what we have been planning is around this 1.5 estimated cut, just to see what the impact would be. But until we get those other unknowns finalized, we wouldn't be able to give a clear picture of what the final number is going to be. So this is really our projected number right now. And that's the grim scenario that we're facing. I do want to say that the only way out of a storm is through the storm. And I know we walked into critical things all at the same time, and it's kind of jaunting, but it's not impossible. And it's really for us to have the honest conversations right now in the fact that, yes, there is the redistricting that's going to need to happen. Yes, there is a sixth grade move. I came into a K5 building, so I don't know. But it's where we're at. And so we have to look at what the redundancies, what inefficiencies that we need to address. I'm hoping that transportation stays within the 10%, but we're also seeing the cost of transportation rise. And so if that doesn't stay within the 10%, this number will rise. And so those are the unknowns that we have to face. And that's why we have to look at what do we currently have operationally that we can shift. And that's where the discomfort comes in. There are going to be some tough decisions that have to be made to make sure that we can run educational systems. And I need the community to understand that this deficit is a projection now. We're not going to have a clear understanding until those three things are addressed. And when those are addressed, this number could go upwards. I can be facing a $1.8 million cut in Amherst. We could be facing a $1 million, $800,000 cut in Amherst. We have to plan accordingly And the sad part is, we have to do it so that we know that we want to make sure our children receive the best possible elementary education.
Is it possible, Dr. Z, to look at those projections and advocate for all, the school committee, actually to advocate for more than what the appropriation would normally have been? That we need to have an acceptable number. Yes, we can take some pain, but we need not swallow that pill whole. We need to make I'm advocating for making a decision for asking for more than the appropriate suggestion.
I agree. We know that it's $29,257,675 that we need right now, with our projections in there, and that's the base. That's holding at 13% for health insurance, 10% for transportation. That's our projection right now, and if we get a sliver of more, I think we should advocate to the town for more to be able to put forth. It's going to impact instruction. It's going to impact programming. It's going to impact what we can or can't provide for our earliest learners. And so we do need to put a plan in place, knowing that, we just need to be able to provide what our students need.
I would say that I only have 1 year of experience under my belt, but I think the situation here, in contrast to the region, is that we'll vote a budget and we'll send it to the town manager, and I think he can just slice off a lot of money and send it to council. I mean, so in a way, it's simpler than at the region because it's only one town. On the other hand, I think we all know what the region is asking of the town and all the towns. So, yes, we can certainly advocate, but I can't help but believe we're going to have to make some deep cuts, even if it's not that deep. It's still going to be painful. Any other hands about budget? Bridget?
No, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry.
I mean, I don't really have much to
Okay.
say, but I guess I should say something.
All right, I'll call on you after
Yeah.
Bridget.
I just have a quirky question, which is, and then a detailed question. Maybe Shannon can even send me a note what that control accounts line is about, because it used to be much smaller, it's now much larger. It shows an increase in the increase line, but a negative percentage in the other line, and so it just doesn't make sense to me. And then I think that what we need to know as a committee to decide on what kind of budget to ask for is, when you say program review and design, what does that mean? That's usually where the heart and soul of the cuts are, right?
Yes. And so, unfortunately, which I have not hidden, 80% of any budget for any school district is personnel, 80% or higher. Other than that, there is operational costs. Unfortunately, it will, to balance this budget, okay, there you go. So the impact will be for COLA negotiations, and a COLA equals over 150,000. A COLA is one for a teacher, and so for realistically, as much as we would try to avoid cutting positions, we would still have to cut some positions to balance our budget. Unfortunately, program review and design means that we're gonna have to, which we've been looking at our schools and say, how can you function? What can we keep? How are we able to function and provide what we value, what for students value, what is needed? What are some innovative strategies? Do we reduce somebody by 15 minutes? Do we, honestly, how do we make sure that people still remain able to feed themselves and their families? We're still able to support students. It's really the deep conversation around how do we implement programs that matter. I did watch the videos before. I saw where parents are quite upset at the option of not having a music teacher, not having an art teacher. I already said, like, listen, don't come tell me about music and art, because that, like, I know that's where values lie. But we also have to look at every position in the districts. Like, every position in the district is there, and this is deep and hard conversations. This is the team meeting on Saturdays and having conversations at 10, 11 o'clock in the night saying this is what we've run. And so every time we meet with the principals and they project or they give options, the team then turns around and runs what that cost would be. And I don't like I know some people on my team are like, well, what is the per student cost? What is the per teacher cost? And we have those discussions. And I don't like to talk FTEs. I already told my team, don't talk to me about FTEs. Tell me who's that person. Tell me what position, so that when I am faced with that question, I'm not saying, well, it's 3 FTEs. No, it is 3 music teachers. So when we sit and we advocate and we have conversations, I need to be able to say, I have had to cut 2 special education positions, 4 paraeducators, 6 people. I'm not saying that that's what I'm cutting. I'm just saying, community, please don't quote me, because I've been misquoted, so I want to make sure that's there. But I just want to say, like, I want to be able to resonate and speak clearly to the fact that it is a deep cut, but it's an impactful cut. And we may not be able to run our intervention programs because we have to value, we may not be able to fully staff, and we're already struggling to staff our special education classrooms. We are already struggling to bring things forward. So this is real. And I know that we would have to make cuts. We would have to look at program review, means looking at the district and seeing, well, can we cut 1 transfer bus? So maybe students return back to a school. Like, what does this really look like? And I don't think, and I'm very clear, that any decision that we make someone is going to be unhappy. So as long as we're all aware of that, but it's trying to make the best possible decision for students first and my staff second.
All right. Deb, you don't have to say something.
I have to say something.
Okay, all right.
This is horrible. Relief from this town is not gonna be, it's not gonna save us. Reorganization is not gonna save us. Consolidation is not gonna save us. I'm wondering, I just,
It's gonna hurt.
I feel like I should say something, but I really just am at a loss. I know years ago, Amherst College, one of the perks of being an Amherst College faculty member was you got to stay in faculty housing, and that was at a much reduced market rate. There's Wildwood. This is just a wacky idea, so I don't see why it would work, but could we make Wildwood staff housing and somehow that, I know it's, the building is problematic, but at a reduced rate, instead of, I don't even know what I'm saying. That's all I got. This is,
Your question is, how can we generate revenue to ease our costs?
I guess, yeah, and can we go the next year out and see what kind of relief we get from the new elementary school building project? And then I know the region has an excess and deficiency fund, and indeed, does the elementary schools, do we have our own? We have nothing. We have no bank. We have no money in the bank. Okay.
All right, let's wrap up the budgeting part. Irv, did you have something else on the budget?
Yes, I just wanted to make sure that we say to all of us that we do, Dr. Z is putting together this budget. However, it does not mean that we cannot ask for that which we need as A, and B, that when we do ask for what we need, it doesn't mean that the town manager will automatically zero that out. That that's the wrong assumption. I'm saying that because we are, i.e. the elementary schools, the Amherst schools, are the largest constituency in Amherst. And we have a very large advocacy group. And I believe that the kinds of cuts that would be required by what I'm hearing are devastating. So I believe that we need to do two things. One, we need to do for ourselves what we can do. We shouldn't ask the town to do for us what we can do for ourselves. But after having done that, we also need to say, look, this is what we really need to educate our children, our students, and that the current formulations do not work. And we need to go beyond that. And we need to go beyond that, realizing that we've done all we could do. We've looked at our COLAs, we looked at steps, we looked at everything else, and we've taken those steps. But after doing all of that, we still come up with a shortfall that really is just unacceptable. And the town needs to step forward and fund the schools at the level that the schools deserve.
All right, Deb already wanted to add one quick thing.
Yeah, I think we should, like I suggested for the region, move up the time of our budget hearing. So as soon as we start to get any kind of insight into what anything looks like programmatically, we need feedback from the community.
Well, the budget hearing, and I was going to mention that, that in case the superintendent doesn't know, I assume she does know that we are required to have an annual budget hearing. But that's on a draft budget. It can't be on, like, on this,
I
on
know.
projections. It
I
would
know.
have, so I don't know if she would be ready that soon. I wanted, Yeah.
What month?
What soon?
What soon, correct?
so, well, you said move it up. Make
Earlier
it earlier.
than we did last year, which
Oh, earlier
was,
Right,
what
it
was
was
it?
in
March?
that was the region. We had our budget hearing in mid-February. I remember it distinctly. It was like,
Okay.
the 13th
So the
or the
crust would
15th,
be as
so.
soon as the budget is available for the hearing.
Yep.
Get that hearing started, process started.
yep. Yeah, I think the Amherst budget was, that process unfolded pretty smoothly.
February, yeah.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
was the region that had more trouble. Okay, let's move on to any questions or comments about the Fort River, the sixth grade move. I want to pass on a bit of information I received from a former school committee member who says, we're all talking about rezoning, and former committees did this. It's really redistricting, where we should talk about rezoning. It's enrollment zones where we're not changing the boundaries of the Amherst School District, so it's not redistricting, it's rezoning, but we all know what we mean.
I have a question.
Yeah,
Can you clarify when you say we're not changing the Amherst School District boundaries?
it's still the town of Amherst.
Right.
We're not pulling Pelham in, we're not, it's still how to accommodate, what schools to send all this Amherst elementary
Can I
students
jump
to.
in?
Okay.
Yeah,
So within each within the town of Amherst, there are 5 voting districts. The town council has had to change those boundaries of those 5 voting districts. We are not doing anything related to voting districts.
No, no. This is just which school, where to draw the boundaries for each school within the Amherst School District. Jennifer.
Thank you. So I'm glad to hear that we're talking about rezoning this early. My question, because, and I'm going to say this as often as it comes up, the new school is intended to replace Fort River and Wildwood, but the capacity of the new school will take fewer students than currently attend K through 5 in those 2 schools. So some students, some families, some houses, some addresses that are currently districted to Fort River and Wildwood may not end up being part of the zone of the new school building. So I don't, to your point earlier, we don't want to surprise families. So what does it look like to start rezoning now? Like, will there be like a team or a subcommittee, and like, does the school committee get involved, or do we just approve? Like, do you have a plan for what that will look like?
So I've been trying to see if I can find, like, delve into, is there anything that has been done before in terms of policy, anything, and I haven't found anything. So ideally, I know that through one of the principals today, I saw where there was actually a small group that kind of started having a discussion around 3 schools merging into one, around like a timeline and different things like that. That actually, and I have to say thank you to Allison, because she, I saw that document today. And like I said, that's since I've been in, that's how things have been. Somebody shared something, so researching. Ideally, what I would like to happen is actually pull, like everything else, a small task force, a small committee together. I would love to have a school committee representative on there as well. And then have individuals, someone from transportation, probably someone from the school committee, the 3 elementary principals in there. I often try to bring in an APA rep, a teacher rep, into the different room, and just kind of hash out over a series of weeks. It's going to be a series of months what that's going to look like. Critically, more so to have those stakeholders there, because transportation will be able to tell us about where buses run. And then everyone else could kind of talk about where students live, the impact of schools, programming, and that's what I'm envisioning, so that we can kind of have a set, like, this is where these communities, this zone is for this school. I do have a concern for the statement that you said, Jennifer, that the capacity of the new school is less than the capacity of the 2 schools that it's replacing. And so, and the capacity of Cracker Farm is not as, I think right now the conversation is, or I've had with early learning, is they're building out space because they take out that wing in Cracker Farm. And Cracker Farm facilities needs more space for the students up there. So I'm concerned about, how are we going to be able to sustain the balance of the population with just 2 schools? I'm even further concerned with the fact that the projections that I received don't really dwindle down that quickly over the next few years. So I don't know I really don't know what data was used to plan around building a school that only has about a 585 capacity, when that's more than the 2 schools, less than the 2 schools that would be feeding into it. So I do have some concern, even with moving the 6th grade to the middle school, if those 2 buildings will be able to sustain, knowing that our population is ever like shifting and changing. Individuals come in because they teach at the universities. We don't know, like, the projections. I do have one principal who calls university housing to see how many families may be coming in and what does that look like. And she does that work because it impacts her school, right? And so those conversations too are fluid. And I have a great leadership team who is very, like, they delve into the different conversations, but I'm concerned around taking 3 buildings in a community that revolves and condensing into 2.5, because we put 1 grade level into the middle school, and what that's truly going to look like.
May I say that, I'm sorry, and then I'll let Bridget, just that, of course, this is going to be a topic of intense concern to families. And so I would encourage you, when you're developing a process, to have multiple opportunities for community input, not just design a plan and then present it. That often doesn't work well in this community, you know, they want to be involved early and often,
Noticed.
okay? Okay, that's all. Bridget?
Well,
I'm sorry.
yeah, sorry. I agree with Sarah, for sure. I don't understand the decision process here, how we got to this point. I guess that just comes with being a new school committee member, but it feels a little wild to me. Also, there's this discussion of what cost savings we're gonna get, but we are opening another school with the 6th grade academy. And so, how does that all play out? I don't
And you'll be paying
understand.
rent.
Yeah, I don't know. One thing I will say is there was all this discussion around Fort River and like, oh, it was getting crowded at Fort River, and so I went back and ran the comparison numbers, and like, Fort River used to hold a lot more students, and now it holds a lot less. And so in thinking about that, I wondered, how can this new school fit a lot more? We have $5 million and whatever the extra money that everyone's trying to figure out how to do. Can we do one of those add ups in the construction process, make it a little bigger? I don't know, but I'm just at a loss here. I don't like this at all.
I think Jennifer wanted to say something?
Oh, just that
And
if
Irv
you,
has his hand up.
yeah,
And that-
just sorry,
okay,
just to
yeah.
following up, if you are looking for school committee representation on the task force, I'm interested.
Awesome, thank you.
Irv?
Well, I remember back long enough when the school committee did 2 things. It closed Marks Meadows School, and it redistricted. We definitely didn't call it rezoning. We called, and I was on the school committee, we called it redistricting. And believe me, we were not well liked by anyone, because those 2 decisions meant that no one liked me. So when I look at what we have coming before us, we really need to focus upon these things that are going to be coming up. Dr. Z points out, it's almost like a crisis heading towards us. We're going to be opening a new school. The 6th grade has to go somewhere. The new school apparently may not be able to fit in all the students that we said it could fit in. And yet we are looking for that to occur. Somewhere, somehow, we must head off this crisis. And it's just not up on Dr. Z. You know, it's incumbent upon this school committee to work in concert and on a team basis with Dr. Z to come up with some really realistic projections, some really realistic strategies, alternatives, etc., that we can put out front to the school committee, school community as soon as possible. Later is not a good choice. So the sooner we get on this task, the better.
I just want to note it's 9 o'clock. I think unless people are eager to stay for another half hour, we're going to wrap this up very soon and then just deal with gifts. Okay? Deb?
So I know there's residual ARPA funds, and I know they're talking about rolling into free cash because they don't want to risk losing any ARPA funds next year with the turnover of administration in Washington. And I know some of the ARPA funds were used to purchase a building downtown for a homeless shelter. So that's just I'm just throwing pasta at the wall, but something might stick.
Stuck.
All
I
right.
guess I'm hungry.
I would say with the sixth grade move, I just hope I know you've had some conversations with Desi. I hope you're continuing to stay in touch with them so we aren't blindsided by some procedural thing that takes 6 months, to move them to a new district, so.
No, we have monthly meetings.
Oh, wonderful. Okay. All right. Thank you for that update. I'm assuming people would be happy to end sooner rather than later. Yeah, I see nodding heads. All right, in that case, we'll postpone B. There was no real urgency about that. That was process discussion. My chair's report is attached. Didn't get any member reports. Jennifer, maybe you'll explain about the warrants and then go ahead with the gift.
Sure, so the new warrant process that we should have appropriately been following all along is that we don't need to read the warrants out loud, but they do need to be posted to the meeting, and so that's what we'll do in the future is. Actually, what's supposed to happen is I think all members are supposed to receive the warrants, but they only need to be signed by one person, and then once they're signed, we will post them on the next school committee's board docs meeting listing.
So today's agenda contains all warrants since July 1st.
For this fiscal year,
Yeah,
right?
go ahead.
Okay. I move that the school committee accept the following gifts from Lucia Spiro, Pershing number 4030906428, to support discretionary earmarked for ELL program at Crocker Farm Elementary, $400, and from Martha Ulver, check number 996905, to support Crocker Farm Principal discretionary, $10 for a cash total of $410.
I'll second that. Any comments? All right, let's vote. Irv?
Yes.
Bridget?
Yes.
Jennifer?
Yes.
Deb?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so thank you. Dare I ask if anyone had comments on the minutes? Because if there are no no, I shouldn't dare ask? Or no, there are no comments? Let's just look at the November minutes, because I do like to post these for the public as soon as we can. So did you read or have any comments on the draft minutes from our November meeting? Did everyone have a chance to read them? I saw one shaking head. Jennifer?
I move that we approve the minutes for the November 19th meeting.
Second.
Thank you. All right. No one suggested any edits. All right. Irv, how do you vote?
Yes.
Bridget?
Yes.
Jennifer?
Yes.
Deb?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Thank you. Okay. In that case, I move to adjourn.
Second.
Irv? We're voting to adjourn.
Yes.
Bridget?
Yes.
Jennifer?
Yes.
Deb?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Who moved that?
You,
I already forgot. Did I?
you did.
I'm so tired. And somebody seconded.
And then I seconded.
Thank you. All right, thank you. We are adjourned. Thank you, Amherst Media.
Thank you.